Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show right here on Rumble, where facts come first and where news is done right. And today we continue our full coverage of the devastating California wildfires and the remaining questions of just how this went so wrong. There have been at least 24 deaths and more than 12,000 structures damaged or destroyed. And officials say the increasing winds bring potential for explosive fire growth. And the heroic firefighters are working around the clock to do everything they can to stop this blaze and save lives. And joining me now for the latest on the ground, Executive Director of the United Aerial Firefighters Association, firefighter and hero, in my opinion, former engine captain Paul Peterson. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me today.
Okay, obviously this is a very difficult situation, devastating tragedy. If you can provide our viewers and listeners, with the latest updates on the ground, and what does the public need to know?
So, right now there's been so many aircraft and firefighters working around the clock to contain these fires. Right now I'm looking at some of the aircraft in the air. There's 3 helicopters just north of Pasadena still continuing to work. Right now the fires are looking good, but they're chasing down the hot spots and just trying to hold it for this next wind event. I think overall there's probably 2 things that the public needs to know. One is we need to start taking wildland fire more seriously at the local, federal, state level. There's so many different legislators are out there that are supposed to be representing the public that have not provided the resources to those firefighters on the ground. And the second thing is, if you are in a wildland urban interface area, you need to be prepared for fire because it will happen at some point in time.
Okay, well, it's really true. And, many people have said, California should have been properly fireproofed. We know that this is a problem, just like here in Florida. We know that we have hurricanes and tropical storms that are devastating, wind issues, etc. Some of this footage, is just, it's astonishing, quite frankly. I mean, it's shocking. It just makes you lose your breath, like it takes your breath away. We've seen this footage of the aerial firefighters. Can you talk about sort of the planning, the technology, and quite frankly the courage it takes to carry out these missions? It's very dangerous. How does it all work?
Just fighting fire just seems like it's a real simple thing. You put the wet stuff on the red stuff, and that's about the most simple part of it. There is a very complex system behind it for the mobilization, the integration, the training. Most of the fire aircraft that are out there, they're contracted. CAL FIRE does have some of their agency-owned aircraft, as well as LA County, Orange County. But most of the large air tankers, scoopers, and contracted aircraft that you're seeing are all owned by private operators. And so those operators are working with individuals on the ground. They're working in preseason, doing training. They're trying to develop future technologies. And it's not as simple as just hopping in a plane and going to fight fire. There is a lot of things that you have to take into account. The terrain, you're dropping fire retardant at anywhere between 100 and 200 feet off the ground in high winds, in rough terrain. And a lot of that takes specialized training and dedication and repetition in order to do that.
Well, there's also been criticism from residents and even from the LA fire chief that leaders didn't have enough sense of urgency to get firefighters what they need as the fires broke out. Do firefighters have the resources, in your opinion, professional opinion, that they need? And, what more needs to be done?
So I fought fire for 30 years on the ground, and there's never a time where you said, man, I have too much stuff on this fire. And so what needs to be done is at a multifaceted level. You have to look at a local, state, and federal funding and taxing level that the U.S. needs to get serious about fighting fire. If we had foreign or domestic terrorists come in and destroy 10,000 homes, or they had 2,000 homes every other year, we would be all over it like there was no tomorrow. And we need to take it seriously. And right now, I think that across the board, firefighters are low paid. Wildland firefighters are low paid. Can't get pay differentials done through Congress. they're the fire aircraft that are out there. You could easily double the amount of fire aircraft that are out there, and you start to might make a chance. The overall is you have to fight the fire that you have, and you have to be ready to fight the fire that you have, and that includes adequate staffing,
Sure.
adequate aircraft, and adequate tools, and personnel to make that happen.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about, the extent of the operations. I mean, it's just, it's enormous. How many firefighters, in your estimation, are on the ground, and, from how many different states, and, the number of like continuous hours worked?
I'm not exactly sure on how many are out there. Some of the media reports I've seen, there is firefighters from all over the Western United States out there. I know just from our member companies for aircraft, we have at least 10 different companies that are down there from all across the Western United States. And right now all of them are working 24 hours a day. They're running 24-hour night air operations with helicopters. And I know all the firefighters on the ground, they're working 24 hours a day, and they need that support from their legislative representatives.
Yeah, that's the problem. Now we've seen a lot of news reports, and there's criticisms of the LA mayor, criticism of the California governor. Very disturbing when you have, and we saw one of the fire chiefs saying literally her team is going to these fire hydrants and there's no water in them. She's like, that's not our job to like fill the hydrants with water. A firefighter is supposed to be able to go to a fire hydrant and open it up and connect it to the hose and get water. Like, what is literally going on here?
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure on the specifics on that, but I know, in my experience, when you're fighting fire, you have to have everybody at the table. There's a fire department preparedness part of it where you have to have trucks to respond, people to go to, aircraft to send to fires, but there is a large infrastructure back behind it that you also have to have that support, whether it's hydrants or whether that is additional contracts to bring in resources. You have to have the entire tool and toolbox.
Yeah, and I mean, it must be heartbreaking, and you're seeing something burn. You've like fought your life to train. You've taken this incredible job that puts yourself at risk, that you leave every day. You never know, you're going to go fight something that is really wildly unpredictable, very dangerous. Two most dangerous things, fire and water, and they're converging in one instance. And you try to go to actually put a fire out and save someone's home and save lives, and you don't have the water to do it. It makes no sense. I mean, look, we just saw the glimpse there of the water and the ocean and whatnot, and you don't have water to put these fires out. Like, how insane is this? The proximity of actual body of water next to these structures. And we're looking at this canyon here where literally the fire jumped across and burned all those homes.
Yeah, and from a firefighter's perspective, those first couple of days, that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when they were getting 80 miles an hour wind, they are just having a really tough time, and they're getting their butts kicked on fires, and they're trying to do everything that they can with the tools that they have, and they didn't have enough tools that are out there. And there's going to be plenty of reviews of these case studies and incidents, and hopefully people will take those seriously and improve those. But like I said, you have to have many tools in the toolbox, and overall within the U.S. and Western U.S., we treat fires, it's this natural occurrence, which it is, and there can be plenty of beneficial fire that's out there. However, when you start to get fire in urban interface, and where it's impacting smoke, where it's impacting homes, and then smoke is impacting populations, you have to do something about it, and we have to get really serious about wildland fire.
I can talk about, for you personally, why you wanted to be firefighter and take on this very noble profession, and what it all means to you.
So it is a very rewarding career, and I think if you talk to most of the firefighters who are out there, they don't want the limelight, they don't want the recognition, they just want to do the job behind the scenes and not get recognized for it. They don't want parades, they don't want cherry pies or anything else, and it's a very rewarding job. It's a very hard job. It's a challenging job, and when it's successful, you just have a great sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
And you're helping your community. You're part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah, it is a very rewarding. I'll say that. I actually worked. I mean, I haven't talked about it on this show before, but I was an arson special prosecutor, so I understand all too well the devastation of fire, the destruction, the criminality, behind it, and it's just heartbreaking to see. I'm native San Franciscan in California, to see what's happened to the state and see what's happened. And then the reports, which are just insane, of people walking around. They're literally catching arsonists, people trying to make the problem worse. David Spade, I think, said he saw like a guy walking around with a blowtorch that they caught and then let go. What is going on with this?
Yeah, it's especially when you have a high population area, whether it's San Francisco, whether it's LA basin, you just have so many different looky-loos that are out there, and you have people that want to legitimately help, but more often than not, if there are people that are not helping the situation, they're a problem to the situation. And
Yes.
just like if it was LA Water and Power, you have to have LAPD, you have to have everybody there to assist in this.
No, you're right about that. That is for sure. What do you think the next steps, should be? And can you imagine the fire can create total devastation and destruction in minutes, and it's going to take decades to build back all this infrastructure.
It is a monumental task. I've read anywhere between 100 to 150 billion dollars in damage, which is larger than the gross domestic product of Kenya. And so there is so many different steps that have to happen, and supporting those families that have lost their homes. How do they, are they living in a hotel? What's the permitting process look like for destruction
Oh
and
my
or
God.
destroying their house? And then how do they rebuild? What is the market look like for that? And that's just to rebuild a house and get people back into homes. There has to be a lot of conversation at a local, at a state, and a federal level of what are we going to do about wildland fire. We have to fight the fires we have, and you have to do hazardous fuels treatments, whether that is logging, whether it's grazing, whether it is biological treatments.
Hmm.
And you also have to do community hardening. It is a three-phase process that you have to do. Without doing all equally, you're going to lose one down the road.
Terrible. Paul, when you reflect back on this, okay, and it must be so frustrating given all your years of service, what do you think are just a couple of the things, factors that, had they been in place, would have prevented all of this?
Yeah, when I look at the destruction, I talked to with just about an hour ago, talked with the fire chief that was down there, and he said, he has never seen anything like it. And we continue to have those examples of, I have never seen something like this. I have never seen something like this. And as a nation, we have to be forward thinking. We have to start looking out of the box. I think overall, you have to have the right resources in order to fight fire. Now, when you have 80-mile-an-hour winds, aircraft can't launch and they can't be effective. They were launched as
Mm.
soon as you could get in there with the winds, but you have to be prepared. You have to have all hands on deck when you're looking at these severe situations, with the weather forecast, whether that is lightning, whether that is Santa Ana winds, whether that is dry fuels. You have to anticipate the worst that's going to happen and have your resources ready to go to respond to that.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it really is such a terrible, perfect storm confluence of events with having this very highly problematic winds. And I know that's some of the headlines, today about these winds. They're afraid that that is actually going to accelerate and be an additional, catalyst propelling this out of control.
Yeah, and the winds that are in there right now, hopefully they've got a lot of those spot fires that are tied up, so you don't impact more of the wildland urban interface. And I'm sure with the number of resources that are down there, they're beefing up on those and preparing for that. And I know that that's in the front of their mind. It just as I said, we as a U.S. need to really get serious about this.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with like having water in the fire hydrants. I mean, for the love of God, like that's a basic 101 for fire, readiness and preparedness. That's the thing. And you must, I don't know, all the chiefs and the people like you're talking to, they must be incredibly frustrated.
Well, they're frustrated, and it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing for a
Sure.
firefighter. Firefighters are can-do people, and they want to do the best they can and serve the community. And when you lose one house, when you lose 1,000 acres, it's a sense of defeat. And I can't even imagine what the LA City and the county guys are going through on this. Just watching homes burn and trying to do what they can, and still they don't have the tools. It's demoralizing, and it leaves them with a sense of or a defeat in there.
Well, I want to say thank you for your service to this country and for your courageousness battling fires over all these years. And it's really been a pleasure and an honor to have you on the program. Paul Peterson, thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you. Have a
All
great day.
right, be well. God bless. And coming up, we'll have much more on what's next for California, plus the latest news out of Washington. And in the meantime, check out our friends at the Birch Gold Group. It is a new year, and that means it's a great time to prepare for the future. Birch Gold will take you through the process step by step, answer any questions, and help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold so you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Text KG to 989898 today. That's KG to the number 989898. Now, House Republicans recently met with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago to discuss the next steps for the Trump America First agenda, including critical middle-class tax relief. It comes as Republicans are looking to unify their tax agenda and to hit the ground running once President Trump takes office. Of course, federal aid for fire victims and fire prevention policies will also now be a top issue this legislative session. But what does that look like? And what will be the role of Congress? Here to explain that and much more, Congressman from California's 20th District, Vince Fong. Thank you so much for being with us on the program, Congressman.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and our thoughts and hearts and prayers go out to you, to your constituents, to the great people of my home state of California with such a difficult time. I know a lot is happening on Capitol Hill with Congress back in session, and I know you recently met with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago to lay out the framework for tax policy this session. What can you tell us about that meeting, how it went, and what steps need to be taken?
Sure. Well, yes, the fires that are gripping California, they're first and foremost. My community is just north of it, an hour and a half north, and I've got family and friends that have evacuated, have lost homes. So this is a very traumatic and heartbreaking situation. But this is all coupled together. The president is certainly very engaged in the California wildfires, especially in addition to our water policy that came up on top of the conversation about extending the Trump tax cuts. And so we're dealing with all these crises in real time. We have to get more tax relief to not only Californians, but to Americans overall. And so extending the Trump tax cuts to provide stability and certainty to our economy, getting our economy back on track. That's, of course, the number one issue that we've been dealing with on top of immigration. We hear all the time. And of course, for those of us who live in California, the affordability crisis that we feel is real. The tax burden, the cost of regulations. And so extending the Trump tax cuts through the budget reconciliation process, that was a big topic of conversation that we brought together members from California, members from New York, New Jersey. I know President Trump has been meeting with all members across the House Republican Conference to make sure that we deliver on his agenda.
As you reflect back on this, Congressman, what are your thoughts? Because people are so upset about what's happened. It's terrible. It's not like people weren't on notice that California has forest fires. I know this. I grew up knowing California gets hit by forest fires. California gets hit by earthquakes. Okay, that's why we do earthquake drills and since kindergarten, every class, and getting under the desk or doing whatever, where to be safe in your house, etc. Very disturbing, the reports that there wasn't even water in the fire hydrants. How did this happen? Can you kind of just take us through it, sort of the autopsy on this as you know it today?
Sure. Well, we're still getting details as for every single update. But as you said correctly, California's wildfire season is a year-round season. It never stops. I've been to Paradise. That was one of the huge fires that happened years ago. My community has been devastated by catastrophic wildfires. When you look at over the past 2 years, from Fresno to Tulare, down to Kern County, we've seen the catastrophic wildfires. And then, of course, my sister lives in San Diego. She was evacuated years ago when there was a fire that was coming over the hill in Escondido. So this is an ongoing challenge for us. I served in the state legislature, and this has been something that we've talked about for years: more forest management, CEQA streamlining, NEPA streamlining to get through the red tape, more prescribed burnings, so that we can get rid of the dead trees and the dry vegetation and the brush, building more fire breaks, year-round assets that are strategically situated throughout our state. Of course, more resources. And I think your guest that you had before indicated that we need more seasonal firefighters. We need more staff. Of course, on a local level, investing in the aging water infrastructure that currently exists. When you look at the water supply, where it comes from, 30% of the water that goes into Southern California comes from Northern California. And so we have to ensure that we have not only local water infrastructure, but upgrading our state and federal infrastructure as well. So these are all the things that we've been working on. I'll say this: when I was in the state legislature, I had a bill, AB 297, that would have allowed for local fire departments to build more defensible space along freeways and highways. It makes sense, right? You don't want a car sparking something and causing a fire along the road. Caltrans opposed it. And so this is one example of how the bureaucracy and red tape get in the way. We need to act with a sense of urgency and get these fuels and debris out so that we can protect our communities.
Well, on what grounds would they refuse that? Because it seems like such a common sense thing. Just on a cost basis, or what was any policy reason for the refusal?
I think it was just a situation of just control. Caltrans wanted to control the work, but again, they're overwhelmed. And so if a local fire department, if a local wildfire prevention nonprofit, if they have the capacity to actually build out fire breaks and remove the brush along the roads, why not partner with local communities? That was another suggestion and recommendation that your guest suggested. We need better coordination between the
Sure.
local governments, the state government, and the federal government. And I think what's plaguing everything right now is the lack of coordination, but also the lack of urgency. Everything is stuck through bureaucracy and red tape. We had fire breaks that were put in my community that had to go through years and years of frivolous litigation to get those done. Now, we did that. We spent a tremendous amount of resources getting those fire breaks approved legally, and they are currently protecting our community right now. But again, imagine expanding that statewide. Every single community now in California, when you look at the urban wildlife interface, every single community in California is now at risk of wildfires. And so we have to be able to put more resources in, but then act to streamline the process to get more prescribed burning, more forest management, removing the debris, and then infusing resources into our fire departments.
And what's the whole situation here with the smelt? I mean, no one ever really talked about them, but they're like the biggest fish everyone's talking about at this point.
Well, that's the bane of our existence in the Central Valley. We certainly get a tremendous amount of water through the Delta. And of course, again, as I said before, the amount of water not only comes to my community, but to Southern California, comes from the Delta region, comes from Northern California. So we have a system of conveyance facilities and canals and pumps that move water throughout the state. And because of a very bad water policy, the state of California has put this fish over the needs of human beings. And the inability to pump water through the Delta down through the Central Valley down to Southern California, that's been a long and ongoing fight that we've had with the Newsom administration, just trying to get better water policy in California.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I know there was also legislation in that said, make, California fireproof, again, that they were trying to push forward, et cetera. And it just seems to me to be such abysmally poor planning and just reckless in the fact that these things were not in place. That, what are we doing here? Why are we obsessing about the smelt fish? I mean, don't human beings matter? I
We need
just
to
don't
do-
understand this. It's absolute madness and lunacy, and people are sick of it. It's one of the reasons Trump won, because people don't want the rest of the country to turn into California.
Californians are rightfully upset. I mean, I've talked to folks in Southern California, and the anger and the anxiety that they're feeling, those emotions are real. And of course, if you expand throughout the state of California and across the country, all of us are watching what's going on, and we're heartbroken with the devastation. Again, as you said before, wildfires are not new for us in California.
No.
And again, but how do we deal with it? What lessons are we learning? I mean, when I traveled to Paradise, the community that was devastated years ago, and I stood at a school with other legislators, and that school was saved. That school was saved. And if you look across the street from that school, the entire community was devastated. But
Crazy.
what saved that school was that they did prescribe burning. They removed the dead and dying trees around the school and had
Wow.
defensible space. And so this is what we need to do. Now, of course, in the urban centers, when there's chaparral environments and everything else, we still have to remove that brush. But again, this is things that we've been worried about. Fire experts have been telling us for decades that we are going to have the catastrophic wildfires are only going to get bigger unless we can remove the millions of dead and dying trees out of our forests and out of our areas around these urban centers.
It's unbelievable. You see these pictures, and I saw a video too of a horse going back in to get two other horses out. It was just unbelievable. But let's talk about this because, I used to be a prosecutor. I lived in Los Angeles many years, and I was at the LADA's office. But, just seeing this is it's almost just unfathomable. I mean, all Pacific Palisades wiped, out. It's still continuing to be ravaged by the deadly wildfires. There is now, Congressman, growing concerns and questions about this overall failed water policy, overall failed, disaster. And I know, like you said, you're all doing this investigation now. But, what do you feel like your role is in Congress and your colleagues from here? Like, where do you go from here? And specifically, what could it mean for not just LA, but for other districts, like yours and the Central Valley, and lessons to be learned, quite frankly, for the rest of the country about fire prevention and policy?
Well, we got to put this fire out, and so we got to make sure that all the resources are given to the firefighters that are fighting this blaze, or the multiple fires that are happening. We have red flag warnings in high wind areas or high wind situations right now through this week. So we got to make sure first and foremost to put this fire out. And then, as taking a step back, we need to do more forest management, do some CEQA reforms or CEQA streamlining or exemptions for these wildfire prevention programs, these fire breaks, provide CEQA relief, do it on the NEPA side, the National Environmental Protection Act, provide NEPA relief on the federal forests. We need to partner and get resources to our firefighters, get more assets. I use this example, which it boggles people's minds when you hear about it. The state of California spends $1 billion a year on this mismanaged high-speed rail project. When I was in the state legislature, I said, why are we spending $1 billion on this failed project? We should take that $1 billion that the state of California spends every single year and put it toward building water infrastructure, putting it to local communities, putting it toward wildfire prevention. That would be a better investment for $1 billion on top of the $200 million that currently that the state currently spends. So imagine this: the state of California and the governor's budget, $200 million for wildfire prevention out of a budget of $322 billion.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And so again, we have our Fix Our Forests Act. That was a bill that would pass last Congress that Bruce Westerman, the chair of the Natural Resources Committee, he is going to push through. Again, I believe that will simplify and expedite these forest management and prescribed burning projects. We think we couldn't get it out of the Senate last year. I think we're going to go at it again.
Well, I really love, your diligence and your thought process and your knowledge of the subject matter is very impressive. So I feel a little bit better if that's possible. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Because Californians are in good hands with you. And I just, it's just, to me, it's just like, this is so sad because it's so preventable. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's terrible. I mean, some people can get stricken with, cancer, even if they work out and they eat well and they do whatever. Like, this was preventable.
Words can't describe, probably what the devastation. I've seen the photos in Southern California. In my area outside of Bakersfield, the Kern River Valley, devastated by a catastrophic wildfire. I think it was the largest wildfire in Kern County history that happened last year. If you go up to Paradise and walk through that community that's currently rebuilding, I mean, it was devastated. So
Terrible.
These are heart-wrenching situations. I mean, nothing can prepare you emotionally when you walk through a community that has been devastated by wildfire. I still get chills just thinking about what happened to my community, and I can only imagine what people are feeling in Southern California, and of course to those who've lost loved ones. I mean, what can you say? What can you do? We have to learn the right lessons. We cannot allow something like this to happen again. We have to minimize these catastrophic wildfires. We have to act with a sense of urgency. President Trump is engaged. The House and the Senate are communicating to how we rebuild, but how we prevent this from ever happening again.
And I think a lot of our viewers are asking, because it seems like California can't manage itself under the current administration and leadership. Does the federal government need to actually conduct increased oversight of how California's federal dollars are being spent? I mean, it just seems like this needs to be, it's babysitting. Like, we've got to make sure that California is protected and taken care of.
Well, oversight is going to be critically important for everything. But you have federal forests, you've got FEMA involved. And again, as we saw what happened in the Gulf Coast with the hurricanes, and of course, I've got communities that are still waiting for reimbursement from the flooding that happened, years ago, 2 years ago. The flood, the catastrophic atmospheric rivers that happened there. And of course, we have to rebuild in Southern California. So FEMA needs a whole overhaul. That's an agency that has not stepped up to the task. From the FEMA response side, from the federal forest, of course, in conjunction working and overseeing the resources that go into the state forests, the federal water policy. In California, we have the state system and the federal water system. They're supposed to work in coordination. Again, President Trump knows this very well. When we streamlined the process to move more water on the federal side, what did Gavin Newsom do? He sued the federal government and hamstrung the flow of water on the state system. So we have to have better coordination, and we have to have better relationships moving forward. And I think that's the role, not only from the federal side in terms of its oversight, but there needs to be more state oversight as well.
No, you're right about that. And it's frustrating, but they were getting along pretty decently. I know a thing or two about that. POTUS and Gavin, not so much these days. You had Elon Musk and the president hitting him on Twitter, and it's just back and forth. But in the meantime, it's like there's total devastation. Hopefully, as soon as President Trump gets sworn in, he can provide some help. Just give us a little bit more color on your time at Mar-a-Lago and, kind of the sentiment that the president expressed.
Well, I think there's a lot of excitement. I think this is an opportunity. Look, I served in the state legislature. I was in the super minority, 18 Republicans out of 80 total members of the legislature. So for someone like me coming in and now being able to serve not only in the majority in the House of Representatives, but having a majority in the Senate and having a president that's coming in that actually shares our vision of making America great and putting Americans first. And so this is an opportunity that we can't let go. I mean, we have to act and act quickly. And of course, as I've told other members of Congress, it seems like as we lead up to January 20th, the amount of challenges, the amount of crises that we're dealing with are only getting larger, and our portfolio is only getting bigger. And so we're up to the task, and I think that's what the president emphasized, is that this is our moment. We have to act with methodically, secure the border, move the Trump tax cuts, make them permanent, revitalize the economy. Now we're dealing, specifically in California, when I talked to President Trump about water policy, about wildfire prevention. I mean, he understands it. He gets it. He's been to California and seen it. So again, this was the back and forth that happened in the room, and I think all of us understand the magnitude of the situation, the history that we're in.
Well, certainly that is a fact, but I know he takes it very seriously. And like you said, I personally know he's very well versed on it and has been for years and has warned about this exact thing happening. So I know it's frustrating because, he hates to see this devastation and destruction. He's the president for all Americans, for all states, whether they voted for him or not. And I know he just wants to get things done. I mean, you can tell, you've met with him, you know him,
Absolutely.
you know the measure of the man. But he can't get in soon enough, as far as I'm concerned, to try to provide some relief, to California as well. We're praying for everybody, praying for your constituents, and all those families, affected. And it's a very tough thing. But I say my prayers every night and every morning for all those that have suffered tremendous, tremendous loss. We do appreciate, as busy as you are, Congressman, for taking time for the program and informing all of our viewers about what's going on the ground in California. Congressman
Thanks
Vince
for having
King,
me.
thank you so much. All right, and we'll continue following all of his work. And coming up, Jack Smith resigns. But what does it mean for the Justice Department? And in the meantime, also be sure to support the 1775 Coffee Company. 1775 coffee is brewed to perfection, crafted with precision, and built on patriotism. The farm-to-cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single-sourced, and that's not all. 1775 coffee stands for quality, freedom, and pushing back against the left-wing corporate agenda that's taken over so much of the coffee industry. So why not? Try 1775 coffee today. You can go to 1775coffee.com/KG for 15% off your first order. Now, ahead of President Trump's inauguration, Jack Smith resigned from his role as sham witch hunt special counsel, and it also comes ahead of Chris Wray's resignation from the FBI before January 20th, because President Trump is ready to hit the ground running to end the corruption and to leave business as usual behind. Here's advisor Jason Miller laying it all out. Watch.
Took office. His first day, he issued executive orders, dozens of them, essentially undoing what former President Trump had done. So what is the response this time around? Talk about the day one orders that we should expect to see from incoming President Trump.
Yeah, this is very exciting. So on day one, we'll have executive orders and we'll have executive actions. First and foremost, we are going to secure our southern border. We're going to get those Trump policies back in place. We're also going to begin the deportation efforts. So that's very important. We're going to remove some of the restrictions on our energy exploration. And John, we're going to get this woke nonsense out of government, completely start stripping down the Green New scam and get back to some sanity with our federal government. But President Trump made it a really big deal, a major point of his campaign, that he was going to get that southern border secured. And I can tell you the team has been working overtime. They are going to put some amazing things into action on day one.
So you think we're going to see results virtually the first week he's in office?
Absolutely, because so many of these things, you can literally just put the Trump policies back in place. And we had a secure border, a record level of security at our southern border under President Trump. And Joe Biden came in and flipped the switch and threw that all away. But now we're going to have security. And this, I tell you, President Trump's border policies are supported by more than 2/3 of Americans, including a majority of Latinos.
And here to react to this and much more, Article 3 Project founder Mike Davis. Mike, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Jack Smith resigns from the Justice Department, but is this the end of the story? His prosecutions failed. Will he face repercussions?
He should, he must, because it is very clear that Jack Smith politicized and weaponized his office to go after President Trump and his aides and his allies. They ran a coordinated campaign from the Biden White House. Biden's fingerprints are on all four of these unprecedented criminal prosecutions of the former president. Jonathan Sue, Biden's deputy White House counsel, is the one who waived President Trump's claim of executive privilege on behalf of President Biden that led to the Mar-a-Lago raid and the two Jack Smith indictments. Matthew Colangelo, deployed from the #3 office in the Biden Justice Department to go to Alvin Bragg's office, the Soros-funded Manhattan DA, to bring this bogus indictment in New York. And then you had Nathan Wade, Fannie Willis's dumb, unqualified boyfriend in Fulton County, Georgia,
I love when you say
being
that.
dumb enough to bill his time to meet with the Biden White House. So yes, there must be accountability. It's called 18 USC Section 241, conspiracy against rights, a very serious federal civil rights felony.
It has to be. You can't just let it go. There has to be justice here. There has to be some repercussions. And I'm glad that you've been adamant about this from day one. It is not okay. It is a crime. It is illegal, and it needs to actually be investigated and prosecuted. Okay. And meanwhile, this Judge Merchan continued his stupid circus last week, trying to defend his behavior in that sham New York case. Now, doesn't this entire spectacle perfectly explain, why Americans have such little faith in the justice system?
That's exactly right. The American people heard all of these allegations by these Democrat prosecutors and agents and witnesses and judges and other Democrat operatives, these co-conspirators against Trump, his top aides like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, who went to prison for constitutional executive privilege going back 250 years to George Washington. They went after his supporters on January 6th, Trump supporters, and politically persecuted them, according to the Supreme Court's Fisher decision last June. And I would say this, that all of these people who were involved in this co-conspiracy against rights, they are absolutely liable under 18 USC Section 241. And that includes judges like Judge Juan Merchan. They are not immune from the civil rights statute to protect Americans' rights.
No, you're absolutely right. Believe me, I've made 13 hours of testimony for January 6th. It's a whole witch hunt, completely politicized. I'm still dealing, Mike, as you know, with cases about this and subpoenas and document requests and all of the above. I mean, it's just sheer madness and insanity. And meanwhile, Article 3 project, you guys are working around the clock to make sure President Trump's nominees, have the support that they need and are swiftly confirmed. Hearings begin this week. Tell us everything.
Well, I would say this, Kimberly, when these nominees when President Trump nominated Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and some of these others, you had a lot of these very smart people in Washington who said that all of these nominations are dead on arrival. And so the Article 3 project did a shock and awe media campaign, and we got almost 100,000 calls and emails into these home state senators from their constituents. And in about 3 days after the nomination, we went from dead on arrival to when can they start? And so I think the Article 3 project gave these very smart insiders in Washington, including these senators, a very fast attitude adjustment.
I just love it. You've got to be that way. You know what I mean? Like, you can't let them play t-ball. You play t-ball and they're playing fastball. Like, it's unbelievable what can happen. But I've seen the lessons, and you guys have been part of history in terms of showing what can happen if you actually fight back and just don't sit there and take it. You actually have to go on offense. And let's talk about this, because I know our viewers are fascinated by this whole process. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown, of how these hearings actually work?
Yeah, I was the chief counsel for nominations on the Senate Judiciary Committee for the first 2 years of President Trump's first term, and we confirmed a record number of President Trump's judges, including Justice Gorsuch, for whom I clerked, Justice Gorsuch, where I led the fight to confirm him, and then Justice Barrett when I started the Article 3 project. And we're ready this time. This is what President Trump did not have last time. He did not have outside support groups like the Article 3 Project, who had a deep understanding of the inner workings of Washington, but have essentially redheads like me who are ready to fight every second of every day to win. And so that's what we're doing with the Article 3 Project. They're going to have the confirmation hearings for many of these cabinet picks, most of the cabinet picks over the next week. You'll see within hopefully the first few days of President Trump's inauguration, he's going to have most of his cabinet in place, and the rest of his cabinet needs to be in place shortly thereafter, and the rest of his executive branch team needs to get confirmed. We can't have it like we had last time, where it took 18 months to confirm some people to his, for example, to assistant attorneys general in his Justice Department. It's not going to happen this time. We're not going to be duped by the Russian collusion hoax, crossfire hurricane. President Trump is coming in eyes wide open, and he knows last time he made personnel mistakes. He's not going to do it this time. He's making sure he's hiring competent loyalists. You cannot be one or the other. You have to be both competent and loyal.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, and we just don't have time, for any switching this out, this and that. Let's just get it done with the right people, you said, that are competent and loyal. There were too many people in there where it was we have, danger, in the tent. It's just, it's unbelievable. You cannot have that. It's a liability. It's a vulnerability that must be prevented at all costs. So, talk to me about the FBI, and what do we have to do? We have to wait for Wray to resign, or how's that playing out?
Kash Patel is probably the pick I'm most excited about, because this guy is a bold, fearless, highly skilled national security attorney, operator. He's been a public defender. He's been a national security official in the Justice Department. He got awards from the Obama Justice Department, so they can't say he's too crazy now. He's going to go in there and clean house at the FBI. He's going to clean out the top leadership of the FBI, the deputy directors, the assistant directors, including the assistant directors in charge of the key field offices like the Washington field offices, and even several layers down from that. We're going to turn the FBI back into what it's supposed to do, which is to fight crime, organized crime, violent crime,
instead of
crime, and not go after
going after
Americans.
Law-abiding Americans, and weaponizing it against citizens for no reason, politicizing it. It's unbelievable. I know Kash is really excited about it. I'm excited. I know him very well, like you do. I know he's going to do a phenomenal job, and he really does understand the inner workings. He's got that great book, Government Gangsters. It really gives people keen insight at the task at hand and what we're facing and how those people need to go. We got to get rid of all the bad apples in there, the enemies in the tent. And I think it's imperative that we do so, ASAP. And what about some of the other, nominees? How quickly can we get all these people in and the votes? What's the inside scoop?
Yeah, I think the cabinet picks are going to be confirmed within about less than a week of Trump's inauguration for most of them. You might have one the following week. You'll have the cabinet picks in place by the end of January, and you should have the sub-cabinets in place by the end of February or mid-March at the latest. But we need to get moving on this. And I would say to these Republican senators, you're starting to get an attitude adjustment thanks to the Article 3 projects. But remember this, it's not President Trump's job to pick your Senate staffers, and it's not your job to pick the president's team. So as long as the president's nominees are qualified, your job is to confirm them, because it doesn't matter whether you have a policy disagreement or a personality disagreement with these nominees. President Trump won a mandate from the American people, 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states. He gets to have the team that he picks.
Okay, well, that's very important, as you know. So I am really excited. I hope we get everybody in ASAP. And it's a big process. I'll tell you that much. Doing my application right now. Oh boy.
Yeah, well, I can't wait for the best pick of them all, Kimberly Guilfoyle for ambassador to Greece, and I'm excited.
Thank you.
I'm already planning my trip to go out there.
There you go. I hope of God and help of God. Fantastic. Yeah. Mike Davis, thank you, my friend. Wonderful to have you on the program, as always. And it's been a pleasure being on this journey with you through this whole election. And now we're going to have the inauguration and these confirmations. So it's great. I think you've been the lucky charm, and you've been right all along. So thank you for always making time for us.
Thank you for your strong support of the Article 3 project. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I'm a big fan, and everyone make sure that you go check out the Article 3 project and follow all of their work. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And in closing, we continue to pray for all those impacted by the California fires, and we urge elected leaders to do everything in their power to deliver the needed aid and recovery for the victims. Leadership matters most in times of crisis, and it's the basic functions of government that matter most when disaster strikes. Let this be a wake-up call for leaders in California to remember that and do protect their residents and keep people safe. We also support our brave firefighters and first responders who are putting it all on the line to protect their fellow citizens, which embodies the core meaning of the America First message. So thank you so much for joining us today in this important episode, and pray for those affected by this devastating and tragic fire. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok. And please don't miss Don Jr.'s big show at 6 p.m. Eastern. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon. God bless.